Greetings everyone. So today I will give a bit of an update on these 4 tanks. This is my L number pleco tanks, and I want to share with you my experience so far of keeping L number plecos in planted tanks with substrate. You know, if you have been following my channel for years, I have been keeping and breeding L number plecos in bare bottom tanks with no live plants. Yes, those tanks were very, I would call them sanitary. They were perfectly clean. I would do water changes 3 times per day, and everything was perfect in there, but it was in my fish room, and I didn't really care that they were bare bottom and they didn't particularly look very nice. But now, as I moved all my L number plecos in my home office, I obviously want to keep the tanks more appealing, so I decided to go the planted route, and I'll take you through these four tanks and how they're doing so far, because it's been almost like a month and a half, maybe like 2 months since I've set them up. So we'll start with these tanks. This is what I would actually call a success, because I'm quite happy with this tank for the time being. This tank has my group of Hypon Sister Zebra. And zebras, well, to be honest, I have only 4 zebras in there. They're quite small. Well, I wasn't very lucky with them from the start. The fish that I bought, they were Indonesian bred, farm bred, and I guess the bloodline isn't very strong, genetics aren't very strong, or they have been somewhat stunted when I bought them. So they're almost 2 years old, but they're still quite small. Some of them do not have very good head shape and so on. They're feeding well and they're doing great, but I guess they're not perfectly good quality zebras. But in terms of plants, everything is doing great here. I keep the temperature at 30 degrees Celsius, and nevertheless, this is Hygrophila tropica siamensis. The rest of the plants are my Echinodorus argentinensis, and this one here is Echinodorus ocelot red, which isn't actually doing very well, but all other plants are doing nicely. And the plecos seem to like this setup. They are actually quite outgoing. You can see a tail popping up here. They're normally very active. So this tank I would call a success. There is no, well, there are very little algae somewhere in the back, but most of the plants are healthy and doing great. So this is the next tank. Well, actually I got some new tropical plants which I will be adding to this tank with Hypon Sister Zebra. This is my next potentially successful tank. So the reason why I think it's successful, first of all, because of this wonderful Echinodorus argentinensis. It was about the same size as the one in here, but now it's just going great. It's growing absolutely crazy. Apart from it, this tank did go through an algae stage, and it still has quite a bit of algae. You can see here, this is Ludwigia perennis. It's still affected by some algae. There's some algae on the moss. These things here are Lobelia cardinalis, and they do have algae. All these different Echinodorus plants which I've added, this is Echinodorus cardifolius. That one looking absolutely miserable is Echinodorus atlantisberg. It barely has a couple of tiny leaves. Echinodorus ocelot red is also looking miserable. So moss seems to be settling well and doing good. In terms of fish, I have here my group of bleeding heart tetras, which are enjoying this setup. I also have here my Hypon Sisters L260, Queen Arabesque plecos, and my Hypon Sisters Montebello, which are doing great as well. It's hard to see them, so potentially, well, it has good water quality, and generally everything is fine with this tank, but I'm not happy with the scape because, well, I sort of made this slope with sand in the front of the tank, but in the back there's very little sand, so there are caves, pleco caves in the back. Well, I'm sure plecos are happy there, but I can't see them at all, so I don't like that. That's why I'm going to remove all this stuff from the back, raise up the sand levels, add more plants, possibly somewhere on the edges, remove some of the rocks, and make sure that the caves are somewhere on this level so I can actually see them. Apart from it, well, I think this is more or less a success. It is manageable, the bioload is manageable. Possibly I will add some cardinal tethers here later on, but for now it is going to be what it is. So now we move on to the two tanks which I would call failures, and I would need to work on them, which I will do hopefully soon. Let's start with this one. This one has my Hypancistris L236. They are messy plex. They produce lots of bioload. In terms of filtration, I have here a sponge block similar to what I have there, green one. You can't see it here because of the mess. Inside of the sponge block I have an air stone, and also I have an air stone separately. So that's it in terms of filtration. Apparently that's not enough for them, so you can see all the mess and it's constantly in the water column. Live plants, this is Vallisneria giant val. Gigantea. It is growing well despite these challenging conditions. Moss is clearly not doing good here. Anubias not doing good here. I will remove it, and I guess I will have to add here a power head in order to circulate water and in order to clean it up, because otherwise it's mess. I've done the water changes literally like 2 days ago, but it doesn't help. Well, that's another mess. This is a tank with my group of Panacolas Clostolifer, I think L06 or maybe L07, I can't remember. It is mess for one reason only. They chew on this driftwood, and the whole substrate, the whole bottom is covered with fine dust from them chewing on driftwood. So it's a complete mess. There's nothing to be done about it. I've done a water change here 2 days ago, and it doesn't really help at all. The other problem with them is that they like digging sand. You can see how they dig sand. There are males in their caves, and they literally just push the sand away with their tails. So in the back I have some Echinodorus argentinensis, which seems to be thriving in these horrible conditions. Don't know how, but definitely thriving. So I can't really plant many plants in here. My plans for this tank is that I'm going to rehome this group of Panacolas Clostolifer quite soon. They're beautiful, wonderful fish, really healthy, possibly spawning in there. I can't really see anything, but this setup is just not manageable. If I add a power head in here, it will get cleaner, but I don't really want to. I want to filter this tank through sponge filter, and I just want to have here another air stone, and that's it. I don't want to have a power head in here. So for now I would say this is a failure, that is a failure. The only solution I have for this tank is, well, basically once the Panacolas will be gone, I will move here my Hypancistris Bellamonte, and as Hypancistris, they don't chew on wood, they don't produce as much bioload, so it should be manageable, and they're not going to dig sand either, so I would be able to add more live plants, and hopefully this will be a healthy ecosystem. In there I will be adding a power head because I don't see any other solution. It's just mess, and it is mess constantly. Doesn't matter if I do water changes or not. So what's my experience so far? The tanks with less bioload, like the one with Hypancistris zebra, very much manageable. Plants are thriving, water is clean, no issues at all. Tanks with L-number species that do produce more bioload or do things like chewing on wood are more difficult to manage when you have substrate and when you have live plants like these two here. So I need to I need to work more on them in order to make them look nicer and in order to make them more manageable. So yeah, I guess it's a learning curve for me, because previously I've never kept L numbers in planted tanks, and I just want to emphasize that these are not community tanks by all means. These are species only tanks. Yes, I have here some tetras, but they're just desert fishes. They're not sort of the main inhabitants of this tank. So yeah, these are planted tanks with substrate, but only for L number plex. And as a final note, I wanted to show this tank with my mother plant, Echinodorus argentinensis. It is actually growing taller and taller. It's also sending more runners. You can see like runners all over the place. Sometimes I cut them off, some of them, because I don't need that many new plants. But now I've decided that I would need some younger Echinodorus plants to plant in some of those pleco tanks, so I am allowing them to develop. There are also quite a few older leaves which I am going to trim in a moment, but the new leaves are growing really large and healthy, which is something that I'm really happy about. I have two separate videos about growing Echinodorus immersed, as well as propagating Echinodorus. So if you're interested, you're very welcome to watch them. They're somewhere on the channel. I'll leave possibly links in the description. So now I'm going to trim some of the older leaves, and like these leaves, they're probably the earliest leaves that I've had on this plant. They're about 2 years old, and normally, at least with my plant, leaves start to go yellow when they're about 2 years old. They're not rotting and they're not bad. I could still leave them here for some period of time, but they obviously consume some nutrients, and they possibly slow down the growth of the plants itself, so I'm going to cut them down. So that's, for example, one of them. Okay, so this is just a brief update, and let me know what do you think about these 4 tanks. Let me know about your experience of keeping L number plecos in planted tanks with substrate. Again, not community tanks, but species only tanks. And if you have any tips for me to actually try to keep these tanks clean and tidy, let me know. I'll really appreciate that. But otherwise, I'll see you soon in further videos.